time for another Coffee with Kilroy, or what I sometimes call, many of the time call, let's just admit it, almost always call, Beverage in a Book. My beverage, well, I think the title speaks for itself. This is Coffee with Kilroy, and it is on a sci-fi fantasy Saturday. Is it going to be sci-fi or fantasy? Well, it's going to be fantasy, because my book today is 4 Against Darkness, a solitaire dungeon delving pen and paper game, which I've delved into this topic before when I covered 4 Against the Great Old Ones, which is by a different author that did 4 Against Darkness, but basically followed 4 Against the Darkness and took a lot of the same concepts to Cthulhu and H.P. Lovecraft lore. And I might have more in that series coming too, but I thought I would go back to the source and talk about 4 Against Darkness and create a whole playlist. I got a playlist now called 4 Against, which is going to cover 4 Against Darkness, which is fantasy based, 4 Against the Old Ones, which is Cthulhu. There's 4 Against Mars, which is sci-fi, 4 Against the Titans, which is Greek mythology, Against the Fear, or Alone Against the Fear, which I think is horror based. There's a lot in this space, but the most prolific in this space is 4 Against Darkness, the fantasy version of this mechanism. And there's quite a bit in that vein. I mean, I don't have all of it. I don't even have close to all of it. Maybe I'll get some more of it eventually, but there's a lot to cover here. And I'll talk a little bit about these, and I might cover some of those separately on some of my Coffee with Kilroys on Sci-Fi Fantasy Saturdays. So what is this book about? As I said, I've covered it a little bit in 4 Against Great Old Ones, at least that version. Let me get a sip of coffee here. What is this one about? Well, this is fantasy, and it says right there on the front, a solitaire dungeon delving pen and paper game. And really, that's all you need. You need a pen, or, I like mechanical pencils when I play these kind of games. You need paper. I prefer graph paper. Makes it easier, and you'll see why. And some dice. It doesn't say you need dice on there, but you're going to need some dice. And the base game uses 6-sided dice. The more the merrier. There's some tables that you'll be rolling 2 6-sided dice. Some you'll be rolling just 1. Sometimes when you're rolling gold, it's very much like D&D. Like, you remember the old, treasures where it's 3d6, and so that's how much gold pieces you get. Well, that's in here as well. So get you a bag of 6-sided dice, some graph paper, and a pen or pencil, and you're ready to go. And it's all contained in this little book here. As I said, the other books expound upon this and go to specific dungeons and add characters and add skills and add equipment and add creatures and minions and quests and all kinds of different things, just like a good fantasy role-playing game would add. And this really is role-playing. It's solitaire, and it is, you're not really, acting out stuff, but you get some of the feel of an old dungeon crawl when you're mapping out your dungeon and seeing what is in the next room and then plotting out your attack strategy, all in a very simplified way. It doesn't have all the complexities of some of the combat systems that we see in modern role-playing game systems. And at its heart is really kind of a filler and time killer. If you just want to get an itch for fantasy, or if you want to get an itch for Cthulhu or what have you, this can satisfy that. But if you want to add a bunch of more stuff to it, you can really scratch an even deeper itch. That one that's really in the back of your back, nape, you really just can't reach. Anyway, you can really add on to it and add a little bit more chrome and context to these things. So what is 4 Against the Darkness? Well, let's look at the back and see what it says here. 4 Against the Darkness is a solitaire dungeon delving game that may also be played cooperatively. Yes, you do 4 characters, but you can have people play those characters, or you can double up, maybe play 8 characters, but you're going to have to increase the difficulty level of the dungeons you're going into. No miniatures are needed, but you can add miniatures if you want. I'm not stopping you. All you need is this book, a pencil, 2 dice, and grid paper. Look at that. I said that. All right, choose your 4 characters from a list of classic types: warrior, wizard, rogue, halfling, dwarf, barbarian, cleric, and elf. And as I said, these other books will start adding in all kinds of other, friends and foes as you like. As you wish. Equip them and venture into the dungeons created by dice rolls and your own choices. You will fight monsters, manage resources, grab treasure, dodge traps, find clues, and even accept quests from the monsters themselves. Your chances will level up. Your characters will level up, becoming more powerful with each game if they survive. Now, I used to play Dungeons and Dragons solo. I used to just grab the Dungeon Master's Guide and roll up dungeons and roll up rooms and see what was in the rooms and roll up wandering monsters and defeat them or get defeated and see what the treasure was. I used to, or even go through, modules, pre-printed modules by myself. But, I like just rolling up stuff and seeing what was in there. This really kind of encapsulates that, simplifies that. The combat system's easier. The rolling up the dungeons is easier. The leveling up is easier. You still get a little bit of the flair and the flavor of items and characters and spells and treasure and magical swords and mystical monsters and all that kind of stuff. But it's much more simplified. And even if you add in all those other books, it's still going to be a much more streamlined experience, and for solo play. Need that coffee. So let's do a quick look through the book. I don't want to spoil it too much because you really need them. These aren't that expensive to get, and I think you can get them PDF. A lot of people like them PDF because you can put them in your own notebook and print them out larger and flip pages. But I like the tactile feel of books. What am I call them? An old soul, right? So there's the contents of all the different stuff, and it looks a lot like what you would expect in a role-playing game. You're going to have you're talking about rolling dice and fighting monsters. It's going to talk about your party, creating your characters. As I said, you have some classic ones in here, like the warrior and the cleric, and the wizard and the rogue and a halfling and a dwarf and an elf. But as I said, the more books add in other characters, and they're not overly complicated. Like the cleric, they add their level to attack, but really on undead. So clerics are good against undead, so it's very thematic. They have spells. I think there's like a blessing and healing. So again, very thematic. You get their starting equipment, their starting wealth, or you got to roll those dice there, D6 gold pieces. A warrior adds its level, and it's more on combat. It can use heavier weapons and heavier armor, and so it's all about being the tank of the party. The rogue can disarm traps and pick locks. The wizard can cast bigger spells, but of course starts off with less life. This is all the tropes of what we expect of fantasy, but you still get the feel for that character without all the skills and feats and all the stuff from 3.0 or 3.5 or Pathfinder and all that stuff. And that added a lot of chrome, and a lot of people loved min-maxing their characters. This isn't meant to min-max. This is to give you somewhat of a basic feel or template for that character, distinguish the character from the other characters so you can build a group and go through a dungeon. When you go through a dungeon, there's equipment, of course, you can buy and all that stuff. You need a certain amount of equipment, like a lantern to go in the dungeon. Here's about how you deal with the monsters and how they my kids always say, it's monster, Dad, not monster. Well, I grew up watching the monsters. So you're going to start with an entrance room. So this is where that graph paper kicks in there. You're going to roll 6-sided dice and see what entrance. And then when you get to a juncture in one of these rooms or a door or what have you, you're going to roll 2 6-sided dice and, read it together as it'll either be 11 to 16 or 21 to 26 up to 61 to 66. And so these are all the different rooms. So if I rolled a 2-5, I'll add this room onto one of those junctures, and then we got to see what's in that room. You know, so if it's a corridor, there's a good chance there might be nothing in that. But if it's a big room, then you might have treasure or traps or creatures. You know, there's vermin, which you don't, there's annoyance. You still have to fight them, but they don't give you an experience. Minions, where if you, I think, attack after every 10, you get a chance to get an experience upgrade. And gives you another level, another hit point, and also, depending on the character, will either add to your spell casting ability or your attack rolls or what have you. And then there are weird monsters. There's a boss monster, and then as you get as you get further into the dungeon, you've tackled so many weird monsters or boss monsters. Eventually, you're going to get to the point where you get to the final boss. And that's how you end the dungeon. So it's very much a random encounter. You're just mapping out this dungeon and you don't know where it's going to go. Now, there are certain of these books that add on that are specific dungeons or quests or adventures, and they're going to have a little bit more of a linear or set notion of where you're going. But these are, or a set selection of choices of where you're going, where this is just more open-ended and random as you go. Then, you know, you get, there's some special features for some of the rooms, special events. It'll tell you to roll on the special events table. There's treasure. You get to roll here. If you roll 6 or plus, you get to roll magical treasure, that's what everybody wants. And then here are the different tables: the vermin table, the minion table, the boss table, the weird monster table. I kept rolling on this. I ended up, the last thing I fought, the last dungeon I went through, I fought, Catabless. Man, all right, time to drink. Every time I mess something up, I try to drink. Boy, if we played an alcohol game, you'll all be drunk with all my mispronunciations. And a minotaur. And then I think my final boss was a mummy. So here's quest tables. Here's epic rewards. There's all kinds of stuff in just the base book, but there's so much to add on if you choose to. And this is all about some details about, you know, the splitting up the party, the final boss, what's the monster's reaction. This is how you level up and what happens there. Here are spells. Here's our encounters. I mean, what do you want? Anything you can expect to find in a dungeon crawl, it's in here. And it's very streamlined. Here's traps. Here's locked doors, things to remember. Oh, there's saves. Hey, we got saves. Time to have saves. Anyway, you know what was there. All right. The role-playing light option, frequently asked questions, and so on. Then in the back here, there's all kinds of flow charts and all the other charts that are in the body of the book are here at the back for quick reference. So, you know, there's a lot here in this book, and you probably couldn't see it that well. I didn't want to do too much of a face-up because I want you, if you're interested in this, buy it. Don't be picking off this stuff. Plus, I mean, there's PDFs you can buy of this too. So anyway, so that is 4 Against Darkness. I like it. It's not, you know, I tend to like role-playing ish board games that really kind of let you get into the character and the tactile feel of moving stuff around. This isn't as deep as a role-playing-ish board game, but it is definitely more streamlined and more, I could just throw this down. And they say an average game takes about 45 minutes. You know, you can set a time limit shorter than that. You can say, you know, after 3 or 4 rooms, I'm going to find a final boss, and then that's where we're at. You know, I just want to roll some dice and take on some. I've had a bad day at work and I want to crush some vermin, you know. And so you can kind of set your own limit on this, or you can let it play out and see how long it goes till you get to a boss monster, or you might say, I want to make this an epic quest, you know. So there's a lot of stuff you can do here with just the basic book, but as I said, there's a lot more to add on here that add specific quests, specific adventures for specific levels, and all kinds of new equipment and villains and characters and what have you. So anyway, I'll cover some of those individually on another Coffee with Kilroy, but I thought I'd at least start with this one. Actually, I didn't start with this one. I started with the great old ones, but I thought I'd start at least the fantasy piece with this one as I go, because this has the most content that is built around it. Anyway, we'd love to know your thoughts on this game. Is this just a waste of time and not enough meat on the bones for you? Or is this something that, you know, if your imagination, you have a strong imagination and this really brings up, you know, those inspiration, those urges of when you used to play, you know, deep role-playing games, and this one allows you to kind of fill in on that or relive that, but in the quiet of your own solitary room with a cup of coffee, a pencil, some graph paper, some dice, and a mechanical pencil. Anyway, take care. Thanks for watching.